Chapter 2: Reincarnation of a businesswoman at school. A reborn female student. The news was saying a female body had been found in the sea of City B last afternoon. The dead was around 25 years old. According to the investigation, the dead was exactly the industrial espionage and killer that the police was chasing after today. While watching the news, the teenage girl still seemed serious. Nobody knew the teenage girl's soul had already been coincidentally replaced by the soul of the female body on the news. Yes, Tang Aining had been reborn. Was that unbelievable? But it was what it was. Even Tang Aining, who was proud of her excellent adaptability, had spent a whole morning to accept and face the reality. But since God had let her be reborn, undoubtedly she would fulfill her oath of the last lifetime. If she could be alive, she would definitely pay Kiziyu and Tang Yaxin back. So Kiziyu and Tang Yaxin, let's wait and see. Tang Ainin was back. She was back for the Tang family, who had killed her mother and used her for so many years. The body Tang Ainin was reborn to, named Guning, 18 years old. She was born in a normal one-parent family and her mother gave birth out of wedlock. Because of that, the mother and the daughter had been humiliated and disdained by their relative for a long time. As for Guning, she was always called the bastard. Besides, the schoolmates despised, isolated, and bullied her as well, which was the reason why Guning was self-abased, introverted, weak, and inarticulate. Guning's mother, Guman, was a common factory worker due to her lack of college degree, earning around several thousand yuan per month. They lived very hard life. Guning was a senior studying in a high school of City F. It was just a semester away from the National College entrance examination. However, Guning was not academically inclined, so it was difficult for her to be accepted into college, and their relatives had laughed at them about that. Some even pretended to persuade Guning to marry a random man after the exam for Guman's good. But upon thinking of the reason why Guning was in hospital, Tang Ainin turned displeased with her eyes, showed slight anger. Probably because they had encountered the same problem. Guning had had a boyfriend before she was in the hospital. They had dated for 2 months. Her boyfriend, named King Zheng, was a student in the top class. King Zheng was a handsome, outgoing boy and also good at studying. He was born in a rich family. His father was the head of the tourism bureau, while his mother was a director of obstetrics and gynecology department in the hospital. Kinzeng was a son of the authorities. It had been beyond Guning's imagination that such an outstanding boy would have chased her. Most importantly, Guning had secretly fallen in love with Kinzeng for a year. Although Guning had known they didn't match, she had been unwilling to reject. A few days later, she accepted. But everything had come to an end right away yesterday. Yesterday had been a Friday. Kinzen had asked Guning out for a meeting. Guning had believed it must be a date, but to her surprise, Kinzen had appeared with Gu Xiaoxiao, and he had said he wanted to break up the minute they had met. Gu Xiaoxiao, the daughter of Guning's uncle, was half a year Guning's senior. While growing up, Gu Xiaoxiao had been instilled by her parents that Guning was a bastard. Moreover, Guning was more than beautiful than her. Thus, bullying Guning was always funny to Guziaza. Guning, K Zeng never liked you. He was with you only because it was a bet between us. I told him if he could have you to be his girlfriend for 2 months, then dump you, I'll be his girlfriend afterwards. So from now on, Kinzeng is my boyfriend. Guziaza had said in an arrogant way to Guning. It had taken quite a while for Guning to recover from the shock. She asked Kinzeng, is it true? Kinzeng, who had been looking at her with disdain, replied with intense dislike, absolutely. Guning, do you really think I would like you? Such a poor girl who has nothing. If it hadn't been for Zaza, I would not have bothered to give you a glance. You are disgusting. For now, Guning could barely stand. She had believed she had met her Prince Charming, but it had turned out to be an absurd joke. Guning couldn't accept it. She had run away in shame, but had been caught in a car accident. Her brain had been badly damaged while bleeding endlessly, while the driver had escaped. When she was awake, she became tongue-ironing. Right at this moment, two soft female voices sounded outside the door and stopped tongue-ironing from thinking. Here is 30,000. That's all the savings of me and your brother-in-law, but I don't think it's enough for Ningning surgery. This was Gu Ning's second aunt, Gu King. She sounded worried. After a few seconds, she continued, well, why don't you call our eldest brother? Gu King said though she didn't believe it herself. I already called, but our eldest brother said his money is all in his wife's hands. He's broke too. You know our elder sister-in-law. Money is her life. One has to kill her first, then borrow her money. Gu Man felt resigned. Gu Kingxiang, her eldest brother, was the richest among the family, but also was the stingiest one. It was merely an excuse that his money was all in his wife's hands, and Gu Man knew it well. Right. How about our third brother? He said he just bought a new house and ran out of money. It's all my fault to let Ning Ning suffer with me. If Ning Ning couldn't recover, I'll commit suicide afterwards. Guman was in pain and desperation. Although Tang Ainin wasn't the old Tang Ainin any longer, she still had her professional skills with her. Thus, she was able to hear the voices from outside clearly, no matter how quiet they were. The dialogue touched her. When she woke up this morning, she was busy absorbing the fact that she had been reborn, and she forgot to let Guman know she had already regained consciousness. Tang Annie Tang Annie felt guilty about that. Accompanied by a quick sound, the room door was pushed open. Two middle-aged women of the same age walked in. They were all in common cheap clothes. Although their clothing was old and worn out, it was clean and tidy. Because they didn't earn much money, they barely took good care of their skin, and they looked much older than their real age. No one would doubt if they said they were 50 years old. Mom, aunt, Tang Aini opened her mouth first. She didn't feel uncomfortable because she had totally accepted the fact that she had been reborn. Firstly, she maintained Gu Ning's memory, which reminded her of the deep mother's love. Secondly, she herself held great desire for a mother. Those were the reasons why Tang Aini swiftly accepted Guman as her mother. Guman made her think of her own mother. Those two both had been abandoned by a man, but Guman was luckier than Tang Aining's mother. Though living a hard life, Guman was alive at least. That's the end of chapter 2. Okay, so my thoughts on this novel. Well, I believe the novel is going to be an eye opener. We have a lot of antagonists from starting with the relatives, and I believe Guzaza is going to be more like a passing by, or rather a character that is going to be passed by quickly. But anyway, I just have the feeling that the future villains of this novel is going to be Tang Aining's family rather than Guning's relatives. So that's just my thoughts on it. Although from the first two chapters, I feel the novel is going to be very interesting. Anyway, you guys should, if you have any thoughts on the novel, any questions, you can quickly comment below. Thanks for staying with me throughout the second chapter. See you for the third chapter.